So it is the year 2024 and I have finally watched Evangelion. Did I watch it because it's a legendary anime in the history of the medium, or because I love mecha, or because I have depression? No. I watched it for the memes.
Shinji, crank that, soldier boy.
I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I feel like when you hit a certain critical mass of memes, I just feel like I'm missing out if I don't know what's going on. The same thing happened with like JoJo or the JJK manga. So if you have any other communities with fire memes, let me know in the comments. Anyways, I'm not going to try to do some like formal analysis of the show because there are millions probably of hours of content on that on the internet that go way more in depth, analyzing every frame of the show, way more than some normie who just watched it for the first time like me could ever do. Plus, there's a good chance that director Hideaki Anno just kind of made some stuff up as he went along, and then it ended up catching on way more than he expected. But here's what I will say, as someone who just watched it for the first time, speaking to other people who maybe have a similar experience as me, if you're wondering if this show holds up 29 plus years later, it really does hold up very, very well. Which leads me to the main point of why I'm making this video. Eva to me is so unapologetically of its era that watching it in 2024 is kind of like looking through a time capsule. It's like a gateway into the past in a lot of ways that I think are worthwhile, even if you don't end up actually enjoying the show for what it is. Like, everything about Eva is very 90s for obvious reasons. It was made in the 90s, it was conceived in the 90s. But there's the, the cell shaded art, the sometimes janky reuse of animation, which still happens now, but I feel like was way more common back in the 90s. But honestly, more than anything else, more than anything that's like surface level in that way, it's the direction. Like, as soon as you turn on the first episode, it's very clear how strong of a voice the show has and how uncompromising it is in carrying out the vision of the director, of Anno, in a way that I don't think you really see in a lot of modern anime. And I'm not trying to be like some old head who's just rambling about how things were way better back in the day. Genuinely, I think there's a ton of quality anime being made now, probably more than at any point in the past, just on average, because there is so much more being made now. It's so much more mainstream. There's so much more funding and more resources and more people trying to get their fingers in the pie than ever before. I see it as more of like an observation about why and how things are made now. Nowadays, we have a lot of adaptations just based on popularity, right? Things that are popular get renewed almost immediately. That was unheard of for a long time. There are so many shows from the old days that were popular and yet we never saw more of them. They would just be like, haha, go read the manga, go buy the entire box set, or you will never find out how it ends. But now it feels like shows like, Frieren or Apothecary Diaries, or obviously like the Demon Slayers of the world, they get renewed the instant they finish. So there are a lot of positives for the anime community, and of course with technology and the tools that it has to offer, we have clean art, we have incredible 3D animation. Like, look at this scene from Demon Slayer. It's actually kind of insane that this exists. I have seen worse CGI in actual Hollywood films, okay? I mean, look at like any of the last 3 years of Marvel movies, basically. But despite all of the quality, the quantity that we do get a lot of the time, the technological advances, I do think that somewhere in that process of expanding scale and increased resources, we might have lost a little bit of the authenticity of the medium. I just don't know if we would see that same level of raw, unfiltered artistic intent in this current era. Like, compared to the 90s, there are just too many cooks in the kitchen, and there's just way more money on the line overall. I mean, even look at like popular shows, right? Like Attack on Titan, which might be the most popular anime of its generation. It might be the defining show of our generation, and they ran into production issues and like people not profiting. Studio Wit literally gave up the show because they weren't making money from it. I think situations like that are part of why a lot of people will say that the manga was better, even though in many cases the anime adaptation might have more resources, they have soundtracks, they have animation, voice acting, all kinds of different things that in theory should make it a more attractive package and often are more popular than the manga counterparts. But at the end of the day, manga is much closer to the artist's original vision, right? There's just way fewer layers of separation between what is in someone's mind and what you actually see as the consumer of that story. So let's circle back to Eva, right? Like thinking about Evangelion 29 years later in the context of modern anime, it's crazy how much it stands out and how much you can feel Anno's vision. Like if you watch Evangelion back to back with a modern mecha series, even a good one, which I actually did, I watched it back to back with Gundam Witch for Mercury, which I had not seen when it came out, but I binge watched it recently, and it feels so sanitized and like unfulfilled and unrealized in comparison with something like Evangelion, even though it is by almost every metric a very good show. It's also interesting because Witch for Mercury takes a lot of inspiration from Eva. I mean, pretty much every anime that comes out now does, especially if it's a mecha, but Witch for Mercury is very like unsubtle with some of the things that it pulls from Evangelion. But anyways, the point is, it just feels like this clean modern anime, which yes, it had its own share of production issues, and you can argue about the writing and the pacing as much as you want, but by most metrics, by most definitions, very well made, and yet still, in comparison, it's insane, right? Like I think Eva is one of the few anime where the creators were absolutely not worried about whether the cast came off as likable or cool or appealed to particular types of archetypes for the audience. Like in hindsight, a lot of the characters do kind of fall into some of those tropes and stereotypes, those very anime-esque stereotypes, like Asuka is a tsundere in a lot of ways. But it's not that Eva was trying to play into those archetypes. Eva popularized a lot of those things. And now, 29 years later, 90% of the conversations that you hear are people arguing about which waifu is the best, which is kind of crazy because I don't think that the intent was ever to appeal to that sort of like waifu culture piece of Japanese media. Every character feels like it is a reflection of Anno's mental state at the time, of a different aspect of something that he was feeling at the time. They're all reflections of the trauma and the experiences they faced, and they all act like traumatized teenagers rather than acting like characters that were created to appeal to traumatized teenagers. And I think that's the big difference between a lot of shows now and something like Evangelion from the 90s, where a lot of these things now, because there's so many cooks in the kitchen, there's so many people involved, it just feels kind of designed by committee, designed to appeal to a certain thing first and then working backwards from there. And thinking about like the fact that they are so unapologetically traumatized and show it, and that the show doesn't try to go out of its way to make these characters likable, that's probably a big part of why the show is so polarizing now, because people want to see characters that are likable. They want to see characters doing cool shit. And Evangelion doesn't pull any punches in showing you what people in these situations would probably actually act like, especially Shinji, right? And the more that I think about it, the more that I think about how polarizing it is now and how much it stands out compared to the types of things that do get popular now, the more it blows my mind how popular Evangelion actually is and how it got to being the cultural icon that it is. Because it's so raw, it's so experimental, it's so hard to watch in a lot of situations. Like, even if a studio gave a director a long enough leash to make something like this today, would it catch on? Like, would audiences fall in love with a story like this, where the actual mechanics of the plot in the world are basically just mumbo jumbo that are not important? Like, it's just throwing lore at your face. It doesn't care if you understand the lore or not. And honestly, it doesn't matter if you understand the lore or not, because all the show actually cares about is the emotional state and the mental state of the main characters in the show. I don't think it would be anywhere near as popular as it is. So in that way, it's kind of a remnant of a bygone era. You know, even compared to other anime from that era that have stood the test of time, like a Cowboy Bebop, for example, I think Cowboy Bebop would still be very popular in the West if it came out today. Evangelion, I don't know about that one. What I do know, though, is it is absolutely still worth watching. All you got to do is let go of pretty much all your preconceived notions of what a story should be. Like, for example, don't get too caught up in the lingo and the world building and all the little details of what's going on in the background and the lore, and try not to get too caught up in characters being like likable or cool. It's kind of the opposite of something like a One Piece, where you have a very infectiously likable protagonist and you have like this massive and very, very intricate world where every detail is like planned out hundreds of chapters in advance, and all the little details are laid out there and eventually revealed, and you're like, oh my god, this makes total sense and I understand it because all of the breadcrumbs have been there. It is almost the polar opposite approach to storytelling as all of that. It is the human psyche, a very disturbed human psyche, put to cell animation with beautiful voice acting, amazing music, and a overall package that is unlike anything you will probably see in the foreseeable future. Like I said at the beginning, it stands out, and even if you come out not liking it, it's worth going through that experience because I mean, I don't know about you all, but after like seasonal anime after seasonal anime that is just very, very slightly altered versions of the same formula, whether it's like a high school rom-com or an isekai or another shonen where there's a weak dude and then he becomes a strong dude with the power of friendship. After seeing that over and over and over again, I am personally very, very refreshed by the experience of something that is so radically different. So in case anyone's wondering, I haven't seen the rebuilds yet, which are like the companion / remake movies to the original TV show. I will watch them though at some point. I know they're meant to be sort of a revisit to the story, so I'm letting it kind of marinate in my head, and then eventually I'll watch them, and if people do happen to be interested, I will make a follow-up after I see those. But anyways, I've rambled for quite a while. If anyone is still watching, thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think. Let me know if there's anything else you recommend me checking out.